Iki used Ito Resetsu to instantly defeat his round 2 opponent.
Wow, he just set the record with a mere 0.8 seconds.
That's a massive 19-second reduction from the previous record.
Iki confidently walks out of the ring, before almost collapsing due to the toll of his own ability. Now, he just has to find a way to defeat Bloody Da Vinci, without the use of his trump card. A short while later, in the infirmary, you find Iki asleep and Stella beside him watching Shizuku's match on TV. Her opponent has the ability to use trackless step just like Toka, so Shizuku counters this by putting a thin layer of magical water across the ground. Now, Sarah Bloodlily is currently tied up on the floor. This is due to Stella walking into the room, just as Sarah was about to strip her sleeping boyfriend. Stella declares that Iki doesn't want this.
That's why I came while he's asleep.
Stella pulls her bindings even tighter, telling her to just use Iki's brother instead. Sarah declares that won't work because it's Iki's strong body yet gentle face, which makes him the perfect option. Stella actually acknowledges her passion, just as Sarah mentioned she needs to use the restroom. Stella tries untying her, but only manages to wrench it even tighter. Now awake, Iki suggests just cutting her free, allowing Sarah to run out of the room. Stella begins explaining the situation, but Iki cuts her off because he already understands. Though he asks her to keep any fetishes just between them. Stella's now frantic as Iki reveals he's just messing with her, and that it was payback for yesterday. Iki lovingly caresses her face, causing her to jokingly purr like a cat, just as Iki's father entered the room. They're both surprised to see his father, and they're reminded that it's literally his job. Plus, 3 of his kids are participating in this tournament. Stella is beyond embarrassed, but Itsuki greets her as if he didn't see anything. He's come to speak with Iki Kuragane, causing Stella to feel an urge to leave, but she firmly plants her feet to support her boyfriend. Itsuki reveals he's been thinking about cutting Iki out of the family, since he's become too famous to hide. Stella bursts out in anger, but Iki asks her to please hold back. Itsuki explains there's benefits to this for both of them, but even so, Iki asks for time to think it over. After Dad leaves, Stella's rage comes out, as she doesn't understand how Iki can be so calm. He apparently was expecting to cross this bridge eventually, though he can't believe Dad asked for his opinion. It's obvious Sarah overheard this conversation, but she chooses not to weigh in. She instead begins asking a question, but Iki immediately refuses. Sarah starts pouting, but it doesn't do her any good, so she'll just have to return later while he's asleep. Iki grabs her shoulder to prevent her from leaving, causing the strap of her apron to break, revealing everything. Stella covers his eyes, as Sarah points out it must have got damaged while Stella was yanking on the restraints. Sarah casually ties the strap back together, but Stella is worried that it may break again and distract Iki during their match. She offers to give Sarah a dress, and even help her to pick out some new clothes, but Sarah declines. Stella then gives her an ultimatum: buy new clothes or have the apron permanently seared into her skin. A few moments later, Iki meets up with Alice, who is accompanied by Shizuku. While waiting for the rest of the group, they discuss Amane and how Shizuku has a secret plan. A depressed Stella then arrives alongside Sarah, who is spilling out of her jersey. Alice attempts but fails to fix this, as Sarah's chest is simply too big for Stella's clothes. Though after a quick glance towards Shizuku, Stella regains her vigor and leads the way to the shopping mall. Due to their collective fame, they gather a large crowd, but each of them use their skills/magic to easily escape the commotion. Now inside, Sarah grabs the 2 nearest articles of clothing, saying either of these will do just fine. Stella scolds her for this behavior, and Alice asks why she doesn't care about fashion. Sarah states she has nobody to dress up for, causing Alice to come up with a despicable idea. Alice declares that if she looks good enough, she might be able to win Iki's heart, which in turn would allow her free access to her model. Sarah respectfully reminds him that Iki and Stella are a couple, but Alice points out that it's not uncommon for people to cheat. Stella obviously protests this idea, but Alice counters, proclaiming love to be a constant battle. Stella then vows to continually win Iki's affection, as the group begins to separate. Iki is actually livid with Alice's provocation, but he can't deny it was an effective strategy. After searching for a while, Stella decides on a yukata and heads to the dressing room to find that Shizuku had the same idea. Stella winds up fitting perfectly, yet for some reason Shizuku looks noticeably better. It's revealed that Stella is ignorant to yukata etiquette, as to where Shizuku was taught as a child. Stella realizes she has to give up on this outfit, when surprisingly Shizuku offers to lend a hand. Stella obviously doesn't trust her, but they come together agreeing that Sarah is the real enemy. Elsewhere in the store, Alice prioritizes makeup and even gives an in-depth tutorial on how makeup is applied. They grab some samples before entering into Alice's hermit house, which is a world created within the shadows. Sarah wonders why the traitor Alice would go so far to help her. Apparently Alice can instinctively tell that Sarah isn't a bad person, and inquires as to why she's working for Rebellion. Sarah reveals that she's only with Rebellion because of a debt, and that she's also been using it as a means to search the world for the perfect model. Alice genuinely hopes she's able to complete her painting, and Sarah declares Iki to be the perfect man. Alice points out this is sounding an awful lot like she's in love, and Sarah hadn't thought about that until now. Iki is patiently waiting at the meeting area, and watches as Alice and Sarah are the first to return. He's surprised to see her wearing less than before, as Alice explains that Sarah was too weak to properly move around in normal clothing. At the very least, nothing will be accidentally popping out now, and Sarah really does look beautiful. Shizuku then arrives, receiving a compliment of her own, before she announces Stella's grand arrival. Everyone is completely speechless as the Crimson Princess steps out in a bunny outfit. Iki immediately asks her to go change, as Shizuku is unable to contain her laughter. Stella runs away super embarrassed, threatening to get her payback later. Iki asks Shizuku to please tone down the bullying, but she blatantly refuses. Shizuku and Alice then head out first, and a few minutes go by before Stella returns, now holding a baby. This child had just poofed out of midair, so he has to be a young Blazer. They take him to child services but decide to stick around until a parent arrives, though upon waking up, the baby begins to cry. Iki and Stella don't know how to respond, so Sarah forcefully takes him, successfully soothing his wails. Our couple is very impressed, but the kid has begun grabbing at Sarah's chest in search of food. Iki is about to go ask child services for a bottle, when Sarah suddenly allows the kid to use her body. Stella can't believe what she's witnessing, but Sarah silences her, saying this will comfort him, even though it won't produce anything. Bloody Da Vinci then begins singing a beautiful Latin lullaby, completely mesmerizing Iki and Stella. The baby is currently asleep in Iki's arms. Sarah is sketching this image into her notebook, and it's obvious that she truly is a master artist. Iki randomly mentions that she must really love art, causing her to reveal that she used to hate it. You see, Sarah was born with an illness, which makes her body extremely frail. She grew up in a small art studio where her father spent all his time working on a painting. Day after day, night after night, he continued to slave until he finally died on that canvas. Sarah's not even able to remember his face, as the image of his back is all that's left in her mind. The hatred left behind drove Sarah to despise this painting, but she still couldn't bring herself to destroy her father's passion. She eventually decided she would finish this painting, and was then taken in by a Mr. Kazamatsuri, which is how she was introduced into Rebellion. Sarah then sold off all of her paintings to have her illness partially treated, just so that she could travel the world in search of her perfect model. Iki wants to know why she'd go so far for a father that never showed her any love, prompting her to declare that you don't need a reason to love somebody. This is a revelation to Iki, and he genuinely thanks her for sharing her story. Sarah mentions that he can pay her back by becoming her model, but instead of declining, Iki offers the proposition. If Sarah Bloodlily wins their match, he will agree. However, if Iki is the victor, she must give up on using him.
Round 3 is underway as Panzer Grizzly Kaga Renji appears from the west gate.
Using his steel skin and sheer size, Kaga bulldozes straight through his foes.
Then from the east gate we have the A-rank Gale Sword Emperor.
His true strength is still unknown, as he's yet to take an opponent seriously.
Kaga reveals it's been 6 years since they last fought each other, and he spent every day training for this exact moment. Oma, however, doesn't care, saying his seriousness will all depend on Kaga. Panzer Grizzly roars as his skin transforms into steel. He then unleashes a never-before-seen technique, sprouting an additional 4 arms. Oma shows no sign of urgency, as he's assaulted by hundreds of blows. Kaga's honestly surprised with how effective this is. Well, he thought. With 3 swift motions, Oma severs all 8 of his opponent's limbs. Kaga knows this strength isn't natural, and asks how Oma obtained it. Without responding, the Gale Sword Emperor punches straight through Kaga's chest, crushing his heart on the other side. Without delay, Kurano stops time around Kaga's body, giving the medics precious time to try and piece him back together. Stella recognizes that Kaga went all out, so Oma simply returned that determination. She's also embarrassed upon realizing that Oma didn't take their battle seriously, and she unleashes an aura of pure killing intent, which Oma receives with a smile. A few moments later, Kazamatsuri arrives, taking a seat next to the Crimson Princess. Stella is wary until she learns that Sarah Bloodlily is actually her stepsister. Kazamatsuri exclaims it was foolish for Iki to use his trump card in the previous match, but Stella has full faith in her boyfriend. Just moments before his match begins, Iki goes to meet with his father. He refuses to willingly cut ties with his family, even knowing it would benefit him. Itsuki asks if that's how he truly feels, and Iki's shocked to be asked for his opinion. Itsuki declares that due to his position, he's unable to support Iki's goals, and asks if that's okay. Iki suddenly remembers that his father was raised with the sole purpose of leading the Kurogane household, so openly supporting an F-rank blazer would be literally impossible for him. Iki then realizes that Dad was actually trying to help him by severing their connection, because doing so doesn't require Iki's permission. He then leaves the room, openly stating that he's perfectly okay with having a father like Itsuki.
Thanks to Mage Knight Korono's intervention, Kaga Renji will make a full recovery.
I mean, it was only 1 damaged organ. That's not even a big deal.
And here we have Sarah Bloodlily taking the stage looking a bit different than before.
With her appearance aside, she also just seems a lot more serious than normal.
From the opposite gate, we have another one looking extremely relaxed.
Which is very strange, since he's already used his once-a-day trump card.
Iki takes a moment to thank Sarah, explaining that her words to help him come to terms with his father. But she responds by reminding him of their deal. Iki declares he has a promise to keep with Stella, and Sarah thinks about her father's painting. Yellow paint explodes into a blinding light, revealing her Necro Battalion as it fades. Kazamatsuri declares that Sarah must be fired up, prompting Stella to reveal their bet. Unlike Sword Eater, Iki is unable to redirect to this hail of bullets, so he implements Trackless Step, causing them to miss. Noticing precision fire isn't working, Sarah switches to a wide-range volley, but with the reduced density, Iki's now able to redirect them. He begins cutting down the army as a man exclaims that Itsuki's son is absolutely amazing. You come to learn that a rank E knight has enough magic to defend against a gunshot, however a single bullet could be fatal to a rank F. This is the reason why Itsuki can't support his rank F son, as it would encourage others to put themselves in grave danger.
Looks like another just finished off the final skeleton.
But Bloodlily seems to have vanished.
Using only his ears, Iki corners his foe, but his sword is blocked by a familiar Valkyrie. Stella's hair stands on end due to the sheer power emanating from this clone. Iki is overwhelmed and pushed back, as Sarah proclaims this to be the only person Iki hasn't beat. Thanks to Edelweiss's swordplay, Iki is able to defend himself and even creates an opening. He dives in, but is seemingly cut out of nowhere.
What the heck just happened?
Edelweiss cut so perfectly, her blades can leave behind vacuums.
Using every drop of his magic, Iki just barely manages to dodge that attack. Edelweiss then stabs her sword into the ground, sending a shockwave through Iki's body. He manages to block her follow-up slash, only to be met with a knee to the stomach. Even Stella has lost hope, as she can't think of any way for Iki to win. Defying expectations, Iki casually stands up, leaping back into the arena.
He purposely redirected himself into the stairs, which gradually slowed him down, at least when compared to a concrete wall.
The referee asks if Iki actually wants to continue this match, prompting him to declare that he's already seen through this clone. Sarah tells Iki to stop bluffing, but he responds by asserting his victory. Edelweiss attacks, knocking away Ikki's sword, but he calmly sidesteps her blow and returns a stab. Ikki ducks under the next slash, immediately followed by another counter. Sarah can't comprehend how this is possible, causing Ikki to explain that her clones are hollow. Their power is equivalent to the real thing, but they're simple-minded due to a lack of experience. Sarah confidently declares he's still outclassed, which Ikki can't disagree with. He purposely leaves his head open, prompting the mindless clone to take the bait. This turns into a test of pure speed, as her sword descends from above and Ikki's closes in from the side. Blood trickles down his face, as the bisected Edelweiss vanishes.
I can't believe he did it. He actually overcame that opponent.
It was only possible because two-handed weapons tend to slice faster.
Ikki closes in on Sarah, who's completely out of options. Remembering her father's painting, she desperately creates 4 Ikkis just to try and buy some time. Then, using every last drop of her magic, she begins turning her raw passion into a painting. Ikki immediately recognizes this gladiator to be the image created by Sarah's soul. Ikki jumps in to meet this warrior head on, but is unable to scratch its skin. He's batted out of the air, completely shattering both of his arms. His sword was flung into the sky as the gladiator descends upon the unarmed Ikki. Blood gushes from its body as Ikki strategically led it through the vacuum slashes. Then, catching Intetsu between his teeth, he finishes this battle with a single attack. Sarah then mutters that she won't be keeping their promise, and Ikki is almost glad to hear that she hasn't given up on her dream. Sarah then passes out while thinking about how lucky Stella is to have him. The crowd cheers at this conclusion, and Kazamatsuri can't believe what she witnessed. Stella, however, is left trembling, as she knows Edelweiss's sword actually hit first, and that Ikki purposely used the thick part of his skull as a shield in order to slow down the blade. The Crimson Princess is genuinely unsure if she can beat this type of insanity. However, even so, she finds Ikki to be terrifyingly beautiful. A bit later, after getting patched up, Ikki meets Stella in the stands, where they wait for Shizuku's match to begin.
I'm not sure what's going on, folks, so let's take a look at the waiting rooms.